We have the light reactions, which require light. I have a good name for them. And then the other series, I think, has kind of a not so great name. It's called the dark reaction. And the problem is students get confused and say, well, if light requires light, then dark must require dark. Except that's not true. The dark reactions simply don't require light. Another name for these, if it helps you understand it, is these are also known as the light-dependent reactions. And the dark reactions are also known as the light-independent reactions. Really a better name for it. So if the sun's shining, plants are doing the light reactions. They're also doing the dark reactions.
Not in the stroma.
When the sun goes down and it gets dark out, the light reactions stop. But the dark reactions keep going. Dark reactions don't care whether the sun's out or not out. It doesn't make a difference. And that's kind of the piece that I have to make in your head, because just because of their names, people like to think, well, light reactions happen in light, dark reactions happen in dark. And that's not necessarily so. So the next thing we have to think about is the idea of light. And we're not going to go deep into physics of light and all that other stuff. But there are some concepts of light we need to understand. One of which is the fact that white light really doesn't exist. All this border, if I ask you what the background of the screen is, you're going to tell me it's white. White really isn't a color. White is all colors at once. White is your brain's way of dealing with sensory overload. Because instead of your brain saying, well, it's red, blue, green, yellow, blue, it's white. And it comes to find out, if I ask you what color the text is, what are you going to tell me? Green. And that's one of the things we'll talk about a little bit too, is green doesn't exist. Colors don't exist. Colors are a figment of your imagination.
Yep.
And we'll talk a little bit about why that is.
I know.
So white light is a rainbow of colors. If I take the white light and I pass it through a prism, so I bend those colors a little bit, we'll get the visible light spectrum. Same thing happens if we pass sunlight through rain droplets in the atmosphere, we get that prism. That prism happens to occur on a globe which happens to be round. So what does a prism look like when we look at it in the sky when rain is passing through raindrops? Curve. The curve, what do we call that curve?
Rainbow.
Call it a rainbow. The rainbow is curved because our atmosphere is curved. We don't see it usually because we're usually looking at a small little piece that looks flat. If you look up at the atmosphere, we're actually round. And it turns out that chlorophyll, which is the important molecule in photosynthesis, absorbs certain wavelengths of light better than other wavelengths of light. And that will become important when we start talking about the different photosystems that exist. So the good news is, no, you don't have to draw this, you don't have to remember this, you don't have to know anything about this. Just using it to show you what we're talking about. We exist on Earth, we get a whole bombardment of electromagnetic radiation bombarding the planet. Primarily from the sun, but the rest of the universe. Everything from really high energy, high frequency, low wavelength, gamma rays, all the way down to radio waves. Well, it turns out this little sliver here, this little smidgen, between 400 and 700 nanometers, is the part we're interested in. We call it the visible light spectrum. Why?
Because we can see it.
We can see it. Now, it's not unusual the fact that guess what the majority of electromagnetic radiation that hits the planet, guess where it falls? Falls within the spectrum. So it's not at all a surprise that organisms or evolutionary processes, organisms have evolved mechanisms to see in that wavelength. The only reason we call it visible is because beyond it we can't see. They're still here. Radio waves, they exist. How can I prove that radio waves work? Sure, because you turn on a radio in here, you get a station. Assuming you're not living in a satellite world, you turn on the radio in your car, you get a radio station. You don't see the radio waves, they're passing right through you, going through your body. They don't hurt you. Down that end, low energy, not bothered. Now, if we were blasting you with gamma rays, that would be a bigger problem. But again, getting back to this, colors don't exist as an absolute.
It's reflection that matters.
For example, if I asked you what this plate was, what color it was, what would you tell me?
Red.
You tell me it's red. Why would you tell me it's red?
That's what it's reflecting.
I heard 5 voices there.
That's what it's reflecting.
We're seeing red, okay. Why are we seeing red?
That's what we know.
We perceive red, okay, you're getting closer. How do you know it's red?
You can plot that is red.
Sure, you know it's red because Mama said so. That's how it's red, or Dad said so, or what you color. Because is red universal? No. If we were in Spain, would they call that red?
No.
No, what would they call it?
Roja.
And if we're in France, it's rouge, and if we're in Bangladesh, I'm sure it's something else. And I used to know what it was in Senegalese, but she graduated 3 years.
Technical what?
And I forgot. I had a student who was trying to teach me her native language of Senegal, because that's where her family was from. I didn't get very far. And now she's been going 3 years, so I forgot. I have a more persistent alumni who's still trying to teach me Spanish. That's failing miserably, but at least she keeps trying. But we have that color because Mama said so. Think about it. How many of you have had to teach little ones colors, whether they be siblings or children or whatever? How do we teach them colors? Who doesn't mind being a little bit silly? You look brave. How do you teach them colors?
Me?
Yeah.
You tell them what it
You
is.
say, hey kid, this is red. Go on to the next one. Hey kid, this is blue. Is that how you actually do it?
No, you like point out this.
You point out red stuff, and does your voice change when you're trying to teach the little ones?
Yeah.
Sure. It's like, look at the pretty red. See the red? And especially, I'm not picking on moms, it's just more common that moms deal with the little ones early on. Some dads do, some dads are very great at that. But some point in time, that little one's bopping around in their stroller or whatever. They have any idea what you're saying? No. They just babbling along, because babies are parrots, basically. Red. And what happens that moment, the first time your child gets the color right?
You praise them.
You
with all
freak out. Nowadays it's texting, but you get on that phone and if dad's around, you call dad and your friends and your aunts and your mothers and your uncles, and you have the smartest kid on the planet, they know their colors. Does that child know what red is? Not even a little bit. All they know is they made some kind of sound and you freaked out. They love that. If you have adolescents, they go through a second round of making you freak out, usually for different reasons. But you freak out. At that moment, all that child is doing in its brain at that point is it has no idea what just happened, but it likes it. Like it when mama freaks out. That child will immediately go through everything it just did and eventually come out with that sound again. And you'll ignore pretty much everything other than something that might sound sort of like red. And now you go nuts again. Enough of that reinforcement and baby says, oh, red. Then you disappoint your child because after they've been doing it for a day, you don't care anymore. And it's like, but Ma, it's red. Yeah, okay, whatever. But for that moment, it happens. Now, do I know what you see when you look at that plate? Not at all. How your physically shaped eyeball biochemically processes the wavelengths of light coming off that and putting it in your brain, I have no idea what you see. But whatever that is, we've all agreed is red. So it works. Think about it. Take a 1-year-old, and every time you show them that plate, say, look at the pretty green. See the green? And then we'll show them lots of this stuff and say, oh, look at the blue.
Oh, man.
What would happen if we decided as a society to do this to this poor child? Child comes and sits in my CCRI class. What color are they going to tell me that is?
Blue.
They're going to tell me it's blue. It's going to be as blue to them as it is red to you. We're looking at the same thing. We just decided to call it something different. All right, enough little aside with that. Let's get back to biology. If we are talking about the light reactions, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about them, then we're going to draw them. And we're also going to teach you the two biggest words you're going to learn all year, which is always interesting. Part of the thing that will confuse you, so just kind of deal with it, is we've got photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. The only problem is photosystem 2 happens first, and photosystem 1 happens second. The reason they're backwards is they discovered photosystem 1 first and called it 1. So when they found the other one, they called it 2, and then realized it happened first, and they weren't changing it at that point. Kind of the same way your course is screwed up in the numbering system in CCRI. This is cellular, which should be the first course, but it's 1002. Because by the time they switched it, nobody wanted to change it.
Why did they have to name it 1 if they didn't know about the second one?
Because, well, they discovered it, and it was the first one. They assumed there was still more because they couldn't account for the data.
Oh,
So they knew there had to be something other than this. But then, by the time they found it and realized, oh, it actually happens in sequence first, it was already backwards by then. And you know how easy it is to get human beings to change their mind? Once
Yeah,
you make
right.
a decision, changing is difficult. Photosystem 2 absorbed best at 680 nanometers. That doesn't mean it doesn't work at other wavelengths. It's just that's its optimum.
Did you say nanometers?
Nanometers, yes. And photosystem 2 absorbs best at 700 nanometers. So it's not a big difference, about 20 nanometers, that's tiny. But what's going to happen in this process is we're going to make some energy products. We're going to do it two different ways. We're going to make some high energy products by way of a cytochrome system. And then we're going to make some other products by way of something called the ferredoxin chain. And again, we'll see all that in exact. In the process, we're going to split water. A process called photolysis, splitting of water, into hydrogen and oxygen. That happens in photosystem 2. Oxygen is going to be released as a waste product. Chloroplasts don't need oxygen. And then the hydrogen is going to be used to create high energy NADPH. So if we look at this diagram, again, you don't have to draw this. I'm going to show you a sort of similar one. in a minute. This is just showing us all the parts we're going to do right here. We got photosystem 2, we got photosystem 1. In photosystem 1, we're going to excite some electrons, pass them through the cytochrome system. That's going to let us make our ATP. Photosystem 1, we're going to excite the electrons, other electrons, and get to our NADPH. So what I'm going to do is show you a slightly simplified diagram. And sometimes it's actually more beneficial to draw it as we do it. So if you're doing drawings in your book, my advice, turn your page sideways because we're going to take